those lines by unique shots. Always takes a little while to figure out exactly where it's taken.
Yeah. Trying to find one building that you recognize and then go from there.
Let's pick up the bench.
Considering the last one, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope.
For sure, eh?
It's hard to make plans anymore. It's,
Oh, there's some
between COVID and the disasters we've had.
Absolutely. Somebody once said, you know when God laughs? When man tries to make plans.
Yeah.
It's becoming very evident. Oh, dear.
You might.
Nine months till Halloween.
Are you ready, Greg? Let me know when you are.
I think Sean's joining us.
I saw him on the phone.
It's about money, leave it in.
Should be good whenever you are, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I will bring this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. We do have a public hearing tonight, but we're first just going to go through land acknowledgement. We'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inklet, Katmak, and Silk people. And our condolences to the survivors of the residential school in Williams Lake, and to all survivors for that matter. And I'd like to thank Councillor Fair for representing us with this orange shirt tonight. Thank you. There are no late items that I'm aware of. Okay. Public input. Do we have public input tonight? This is not public input for the public hearing. This is public input for items on the agenda. Anybody signed up for that? Okay. Pardon me?
I'm speaking to one of the items on the agenda. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you please come forward and give your name?
My name is Sward. Is this on?
No, it's not on
Yep.
yet. If
Yes.
you push the button.
There's no button anymore, Your Worship.
Oh, there isn't a button?
No.
Oh.
My name is Ken Sward. I live on Burgess Avenue here.
Ken, I have you on as a presenter.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily this.
So Ken, your item 6.1, which is after the public hearing.
Okay, have that.
Thanks.
It's okay, I should have explained it a little bit better than that. So we'll move on then to 4.1, regular council meeting minutes. I need a recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on the 11th of January 2022 be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Christopherson and Luck. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, none. Carried. And now we're into our public hearing. So this public hearing is convened to consider the following two bylaws. The official community plan amendment bylaw number 2327, 2021, and the zoning amendment bylaw number 2328, 2021. The purpose of this public hearing is not for debate, but is to allow everyone an opportunity to express your views. The meeting is open to the public and is being webcast online. Mr. Lois, our Director of Corporate Services, can you explain how the public were able to express their views to this hearing?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, for public hearings as they're currently operating, we did have to include a caveat in the statutory notice that we weren't completely sure at the time we placed the advert what kind of restrictions would be in place at the for public attendance at the time we had this hearing. But fortunately, there were no new public health orders, which means at this time anyone can attend a council meeting in person. So this means that the methods people had to express their views were to make submissions in writing, either in hard copy or by email. Two of those were received to the address stated in the public notice by the deadline provided, and they were circulated with the agenda. In addition, there was a piece of input which was provided by the deadline to a different email address, which has been circulated to all of you, and you have the hard copies of that. And there are also people who were provided the option of attending not only in person but also virtually online. And we have two presenters who are waiting on a Teams call to make statements later this evening. So the methods are currently available for people to make their submissions, and whether it were, as I say, in writing, in hard copy or email, in person or by video conference.
Thank you. Can you confirm that the statutory advertising requirements were met?
Yes, Your Worship, that was posted in 2 editions of the Merit Herald in the last 2 weeks.
Ms. Bradshaw, who's our community planner, can you please provide an overview of these bylaws?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just as a quick overview, True Consulting on behalf of Spire is proposing to amend the official community plan to change the land use designation of the subject property from future development and institutional to comprehensive residential commercial. The applicant is also proposing to amend the zoning bylaw to change the zoning from institutional and public use to comprehensive development. The official community plan, OCP, generally supports the proposed development. Section 5.4.6 of the OCP outlines policy direction for establishing development at Gateway 286, including commercial development. The area is also within the Highway Corridor Gateway Development Permit Area, which encourages commercial development. The first draft of the proposed new OCP, published on October 29th, 2021, if adopted, would also support the proposed development. So this proposal is one half of the planned Gateway 286 development area. The property at 2320 Hamilton Hill Road, east of the subject property, is slated for residential development and a hotel. That rezoning application has received 3 readings and is currently pending Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure approval before being presented for final adoption. The 2 property owners at Gateway 286 petitioned the city for a local area service for installation of the water and sanitary sewer service connections. The original estimated cost of the extension of services was approximately $7.5 million. After discussions with the applicant, it's understood their preference is to proceed with the current local area service, and if additional funding is required, have the option to prepare a second local area service with excess costs. This would make things more complicated for finance, however, would assist in keeping the developer's timelines on track. The local area service infrastructure works also require agreements with the province and Lower Nicola Band. Some additional financial considerations. The city's contracted engineering consultant has identified approximately $13.2 million in additional off-site works, which may be necessitated by the proposed development. An estimated $4.3 million is directly attributable to the Gateway 286 projects. Some of the offsite costs could potentially be funded by creating new projects in an updated development cost charges bylaw. City staff have started the creation of a request for proposals to hire a consultant to develop the new DCC's bylaw. Alternatively, a negotiation with the Gateway 286 applicants could be conducted to obtain agreements to apportion the costs for upgrades that wouldn't otherwise be required but for the development at Exit 286. And the remaining estimated $8.9 million of off-site costs would need to be funded through various mechanisms, such as DCC's grant funding, city reserves, or potentially borrowing. The proposed Gateway 286 developments would be built over a 20-year period, so these costs would be spread out over that time and eventually would be required, whether Exit 286 develops or not. In addition to potential infrastructure improvements, fire coverage needs to be considered. If the city plans to provide increased levels of fire coverage, a new fire hall would need to be constructed on the southeast of the community. Alternatively, the developers could agree to maintaining the current level of fire coverage, which would likely impact insurance costs. And in terms of traffic impact and road improvements, the developer has submitted a TIA, a traffic impact assessment, for review by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and the city. The TIA will need to be approved before the MOTI will sign off on the proposed rezoning. Lastly, if this rezoning was to be approved, the next stage would be subdivision. At this stage, all servicing requirements would be completed, as well as other various studies. And a no-build covenant related to downstream infrastructure cost sharing would be a condition of subdivision unless the cost sharing agreement for downstream services is finalized prior to subdivision approval. A number of options are available to council later at third reading, but if you have any other questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for staff at this point? Ms. Bradshaw, I had a question. And I'm not sure if it was a typo or if it was meant to be that way, but we've got in one of our documents on page 8 and 18, hold on, what pages? We talk about the DCCs being covered over 20 years, and there's another place in the document that talks about, I think it's the financing over 30 years. And yet in the second document, we have it over 20 years. So I'm not exactly sure whether the first one is a typo. And page 88 is ringing a bell. That's all I can remember.
I see it on page 88, 20 years for DCCs.
Covered over without taking a 30-year loan. So that is correct. So
30 years is correct.
And yet one of the other documents said that it's all going to be done over a 20-year period. So I'm not quite sure why they differ. But if we know that it's over a 30-year, not a 20-year, I'm okay with that to go ahead.
This is where it's for the finance. Okay. Yeah, the planned build out of the development is 20 years.
But the leasing cost, Mr. Anderson has said, I'm going to let you say it.
Yes, the loan authorization bylaw is based on a 30-year term.
Okay. That makes sense. I'm good with that. Anybody else have questions for staff? There's one thing I'd like to confirm, that I'm just a little leery with this 7.5 million potentially turning into a greater number and the issues that are surrounding it on behalf of the city. can I have assurances that the city is not going to get stuck with the additional costs? Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Bradshaw and myself did have a conversation with the developer of this project just the other day here, and I guess that was yesterday. We did talk about that, about having a potential agreement in place for cost overages related to local area of service, and I think we all agreed that that would probably be a good idea to do that, just for assurances of the city, and basically stating that the developer wishes to proceed with this local area service, and if there are additional costs, that a second local area service be developed. So to have that in writing, I think is a good idea, and that's something that was discussed on that call. So
Good, thank you. Councillor Richard.
So my question is just kind of building on this other comment about the second local area service. Would it be a covenant per lot? Because I know when we had looked at this plan before, it was up to development of so many lots, 400 or some number like that. Would it be that they would have a certain parcel tax per year to repay once it's developed, or would that be something like that?
Mr. Anderson? Oh, sorry.
In the petition to the city, there is a cost recovery method in place. I think it's 48.52%, if I'm not mistaken. So between the two parcels, it would start out with that allocation, and as the build out of the subdivision occurs, then it would be allocated to the lots based on a prescribed amount over that 30-year term. Unless the parties or one of the other parties commute some of the value, so it can be reduced instead of the 7.5 million. If they have 2.5 million to contribute up front, then that can be commuted and we won't have to borrow the full 7.5. They'll have a smaller amount to allocate to those parcels. But as they build out the subdivision, there'll be a method for moving it from the main parcel to all of the lots that are built out, and those would be charges for that 30-year period, or the remainder of that 30-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Mayor. Builds on a little bit more what that is how does that look for our borrowing powers as we move forward? I think you mentioned it in the document, but just so everybody understands that, Wayne and Mr. Anderson, is how does that look? Should we need to be borrowing money in the future? How does that squeeze out borrowing room for this actual city doing work moving forward? Are we on safe ground, is guess what I'm asking?
Yes, through the Mayor to Councillor Luck. The report that was done back in the spring indicated that by borrowing $7.5 million, we would be at about 40 to 42% of our debt servicing limit. That's higher than we've been, obviously, but according to the Minister, that is not a super high rate, if you like. I mean, we do have capacity beyond that, but it would take us up to about 40 to 42% of our debt servicing limit. So we've been comfortably operating at about 20%. So that's
the additional loan that we may have to.
That would, I haven't done the numbers on that at this time, but I would expect if it's about $2.5 million, then it would probably add about 7%, maybe 7 to 10%.
So 47.
It could get us up closer to 50%.
Okay, but we're still comfortable in that, are we?
Yeah, that's still a comfortable level. Yeah.
I'm just saying we're a comfortable level, but if we settle in a project, we need to do what we need to borrow. We just got to make sure that we're still comfortable borrowing a little bit more money on top of it, right? That's what I was worried about.
It definitely does impact our ability to borrow. Exactly. If we need to borrow $10 million for something, then that would definitely push us up another notch again.
So one more question on that is, what is the max we usually like to see for cities, debt to equity ratio, or what do we call it, debt ratio on that?
From what I've heard, 75% would be about where you want to cap it off and not exceed that. You need to have some room.
Yeah, you need to have some room. Yeah. Okay, no, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Lewis.
Your Worship, I just wanted to note that All of the issues that have been raised so far are completely valid issues for you to consider as you move these bylaws about, but just on a purely procedural note, you are currently in the public hearing, which is meant to be discussed, hearing from the public or people who believe their interest in property is affected by the OCP and zoning bylaws. So the issues around the local area service bylaws are certainly not irrelevant, and it's entirely possible there are public who might wish to, who believe that those are matters contained within the bylaws subject to this hearing. But if you want to debate about the local area service issues, that might be better reserved for the third reading of the bylaw.
Yeah, I was hoping we weren't debating. I thought we were asking questions.
Just asking questions. Yeah. Good point.
Thank you. I do have one other question. And it's a question. It talks about a new DCC bylaw, and I just want to be reassured that our new DCC bylaw that will be implemented at the end of this year will apply to this development.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the projects in this we do intend to include in the DCC's bylaw. However, of note, all of the costs of the projects may not be covered by DCCs, right? So only a percentage of monies that are collected through the DCC would go to this project. There are a number of other projects, of course, across the city that would also be funded under DCCs. So that's one of the challenges, of course, when we talk about cost sharing versus DCCs versus like how are we going to pay for those downstream costs. And so yes, though, in short, we do intend to include those downstream services as DCC's projects.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Just would like to add one knock-on point, that in discussions with the developer, that we wouldn't be holding up the project if the DCC bylaw wasn't in place. What we would be doing is requiring that separate analysis is done, so that the exact same thing you'd be doing in the DCC bylaw to be able to determine the downstream costs, where they haven't been adequately costed now, would be applicable here, but that we wouldn't be waiting for that DCC bylaw. I can tell you that it is literally, the draft for the RFP is literally open on my computer as we speak, and so it's going to be going up here imminently.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I do believe that the applicants are here or have a submission to make and a video. And whichever order you choose, please come forward and let us know.
I believe online.
Should be.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Yes, we do have a. Maybe I'm not.
Actually, perhaps. They should know.
Again, good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having us this evening. We do have a video presentation. We weren't sure if we were going to be in person, not in person, so I've prepared video, and then I'm here to answer questions at the conclusion. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gary Maleka, and I am with True Consulting. I am presenting tonight on behalf of Spam Holdings, who is seeking Council's approval to amend the official community plan and zoning bylaw in order to create a comprehensive commercial node in an area commonly referred to as Gateway 286. As you know, Spam Holdings is a consortium of the 5 First Nations of the Nicola Valley. Gateway 286 has been a jointly evaluated opportunity between the 5 First Nations and the city for over 26 years. The land has now been successfully transferred by the province, and the many encumbrances have been settled, including the ALR designation. To create a retail commercial node within the southwest sector of Merritt, a development that will service not only those traveling on the Coquihalla and the Okanagan Connector, but also city residents and the First Nation communities throughout the Nicola Valley. We are seeking an amendment to the official community plan to redesignate 11.6 hectares or 28.7 acres from institutional and future development to comprehensive residential commercial. We are also seeking an amendment to the zoning bylaw to rezone the lands from institutional public use to Comprehensive Development DC3. It is important to share with you some of the key milestones achieved in the past 12 months, which has resulted in us being before you this evening. These milestones have been a collaboration with municipal, provincial, and federal staff, as well as neighboring landowners. On February 11, 2021, Spam Holdings and Ladner Ventures submitted a local area service petition to the city, seeking services in the form of water and sanitary sewer needed to adequately service the Gateway 286 sector. Council accepted our LAS petition and gave third reading to the loan authorization bylaw on March 23rd of 2021. On March 19th, 2021, the province transferred ownership of the 11.6 hectares of land at the intersection of Highway 5 and Highway 97C to Spam Holdings, LP, on behalf of the 5 First Nations. On June 8th of 2021, Council gave third reading to the OCP and rezoning bylaws for Palomino Point Estates, a proposed comprehensive residential development put forward by Ladner Ventures Incorporated. On June 3rd of 2021, Spam received federal grant funding through Indigenous Services Canada in the amount of $2.5 million to support development of Gateway 286. On September 14th, 2021, Spam Holdings was successful in having a portion of the subject lands removed from the Agricultural Land Reserve, thus allowing development of the entire 11.6 hectares to proceed. In terms of the proposed OCP amendment, our application seeks to redesignate the subject lands from institutional and future development to comprehensive residential commercial. Section 3.1.3 of the OCP highlights the city's commitment to working with First Nations and public-private landowners in establishing a new sector neighborhood in Southwest Merritt. Furthermore, Section 5.4.6 highlights policies put in place to guide further future development of the Gateway 286 lands. SPAM's proposal ensures municipal water and sanitary services, preservation of views across the valley, ample parking for those using the Goddard Creek Recreation Area, and a development that is a mix of commercial and office uses. In terms of the proposed zoning amendments, we are seeking to rezone the subject lands from institutional and public use to Comprehensive Development Zone, or CD3 zone. The CD3 zone is a site-specific zoning with rules and regulations specific to the subject lands. The CD3 zone is split into Development Cell A and Development Cell B as a result of the intent and proposed uses for each cell. Development Cell A represents approximately 2.8 hectares of developable land and would be the first phase to be developed. Before you is a list of uses proposed within Development Cell A. SPAM has partnered with Troika Management Corp. To develop Cell A. Rich Trelfall, president of Troika, is in attendance this evening and will be speaking to their proposal following my presentation. Full build-out of Development Cell A is anticipated within 4 to 5 years. Development Cell B represents 4.6 hectares of developable land anticipated to be built out following the build-out of Cell A. Shown are some of the uses proposed for Cell B. In closing, the proposed development is in keeping with the objectives and policies set out in the city's official community plan. The proposed Comprehensive Development Zone, or CD3 zone, provides for a mix of retail and commercial uses that will support SPAM's vision for Gateway 286. SPAM has partnered with Troika Management Corp. To develop the first phase. And finally, SPAM looks for Council's continued support in recognizing that Gateway 286 is a significant and major entry into the city of Merritt. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm available to answer any questions you may have regarding our application.
Things based on the earlier discussion. So with regards to the staff report, there was mention of 2 options in terms of the LAS petition. And just to clarify, we're dealing with whether or not the subject lands are appropriate for the OCP and for land use. Those components with regards to financial matters, off-site servicing agreements, etc., are really going to be played out at subdivision and development permit stage. So I can appreciate you'll have some questions regarding that, but just with all due respect, we're working on whether the uses are appropriate, just as the case was with the Palomino project adjacent to us, which I alluded to. That being said, we just wanted to correct something with regards to what was presented earlier. In terms of the two options on the LAS petition and slash bylaws, we actually probably, the opinion is probably 3, 4, 5 options really. It's different scenarios. The one option that we do favor, contrary to what was mentioned earlier about the two LAS petitions or bylaws, is the simple fact that the existing petition that's in place between us and Palomino and the two bylaws that have been given third reading stand. And as was alluded to in the staff report, is that we would cover the difference in any overages, which we'll be working through with the city on what exactly those would be when we get to that point of going through the construction. We do have, in SPAM's case, we do have federal funding. We do have also lease agreements that allow us to, as Mr. Anderson alluded to earlier, pay down some of that component in a short period of time. So our anticipation would be as we'd be going for the short-term loans until such time as we are in a position to finish construction and then advance to a longer-term loan. Therefore, releasing the debt that the city holds and hopefully bringing the 42% down even lower once we've contributed more on the 7.5. I think at that point, I'll leave it alone. I know we'll have other questions that I'm sure will come up with council, but we do appreciate the time. We're definitely excited to be in front of you this evening and get this application moving. We do have federal grant funding that has a time limit on it, and that we've been trying to work with, and we appreciate that, you know, the city's obviously gone through some serious hiccups in the last couple of months, and as unfortunate as it is, so we've all been able to sort of step back for a while as you guys kind of bring everybody back together and let everybody get back settled in. And so now it looks like we have an opportunity to start moving forward. In our case, while we're not presenting residential housing in this our proposal, Palomino is, and we know housing is critical to get that on the get that moving in all aspects of applications you've been dealing with in the last year. So with that, I'll here for any questions. Otherwise, I will pass it off to Richard to follow with Troika.
Are there any questions? Council? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Are we able to get my presentation up?
Yep, sorry, give me a second.
Is this on?
It doesn't sound very loud, but Greg assures us it's on.
I'll do my best to speak up through the mask.
Sorry, just 1 second. When was this sent through again? I'm frantically checking emails.
What's that?
So when was it sent through again?
It was from, I sent it through to you by email, I believe, on Friday.
Present. Nope. There we go. Sorry about that.
No worries. And will you be able to click through, or
yeah. There we go. Okay.
You'll be able to advance the slides?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. So again, good evening, Mayor and Council, and everyone else participating today, in person or online. My name is Rich Threlfall, and I am the president of Troika Management Corp. Troika is a development partner, as Gary mentioned earlier, on this project, and I'm excited to be here today to discuss a few key aspects of our proposed plan. So to start, please advance the next slide. Up one. Thank you. To start, I'd just like to give you a brief overview of who Troika is. So Troika is a progressive, future-focused land and real estate development company based in Kelowna, BC. We're involved from start to finish in the creation of living spaces and communities, from the acquisition of underutilized land, construction, sales, and marketing, through to property management. We currently have projects in various stages in 8 different municipalities across Western Canada, as far east as Winnipeg. Our mission is building sustainable communities. Troika is both strategic and holistic in our approach to create the best possible environment for our communities. Deep thought goes into every detail, and we work hard to always deliver what we promise. We fully intend to adopt this philosophy as a development partner on these lands. If you'd like to learn more about Troika, I encourage you to visit our website at troikadevelopments.com. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, the first part of this project is the first 7 acres. The current concept plan shows the potential for over 30,000 square feet of commercial space, including a gas station, a convenience store, 3 or 4 drive-through food or coffee establishments, multiple opportunities for recreational commercial retail and food establishments, as well as washrooms available to the public, and a centralized plaza for eating and gathering while enjoying the Merritt Valley view. We're also providing parking for larger vehicles such as RVs, buses, transportation vehicles, and vehicles with trailers. It is important to note that parking and access will be available for users of the Gaudy Creek recreational area as well. As part of the landscaping features of the site, we are proposing to include a fenced dog park, providing an opportunity for travelers to get their furry friends a much-needed break from the car ride. Next slide, please. So as noted, our mission is to build sustainable communities. Sustainability includes 4 pillars: environmental, economic, social, and cultural. As we continue to develop plans for this project, we will keep all 4 pillars of sustainability top of mind. A few key items to note at this stage regarding the environmental sustainability components include minimal water use. We have included in the design a water feature that only has water in it collected from controlled rainwater. What that means is at times this feature will actually be dry, and it will be designed still to look appealing and attractive component of our site, even without the water. We will also use thoughtful landscaping with drought-tolerant plants and a site design that allows for the use of stormwater where possible. We will utilize energy-efficient building designs and components, and that includes metered service connections to encourage tenant efficiency, specifically on the water use. And also, based on current discussions with some electric car charging suppliers, we are anticipating having the largest electric car charging station in Western Canada. So those are just a few examples of how we intend to move forward with thoughtful, environmentally sustainable design on this site. So of course, I stand here today in strong support of the proposed rezoning and OCP application. This project is a pivotal moment in the opportunity for Merritt to grow through significant servicing improvements being installed that can service multiple lands in addition to the subject property, to the creation of a landmark destination for travelers. It is important to recognize that we are here at this exciting milestone for this project due to the perseverance, partnerships, and collaborative relationships formed between the 5 First Nation communities, city staff, mayor, and council, and the many consultants that have been involved. Another amazing opportunity is that throughout the construction, as well as future operation and maintenance of this site, First Nation members and businesses will have the opportunity to be involved further, enhancing the economic benefits to the First Nation communities. We acknowledge how much the City of Merritt has gone through, and know that this good news story can act as a beacon of hope for a positive future. While there is possibility that new commercial areas will create competition for existing businesses, we anticipate the vast majority of users will be travelers that would have traditionally bypassed Merritt altogether. Existing businesses have the opportunity to lease space in this new complex, creating opportunities to expand their reach to new clientele. In addition to servicing the traveling public, this new commercial area will provide new and additional options for existing residents of Merritt, as well as service to future residential developments in the area. We're excited and ready to move this project forward. The last one here, sorry. We will work closely with staff through the submission and approval and building plans and look forward to having shovels in the ground as quickly as possible. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Threlfeld? Doesn't look like we have any.
All right.
Thank you.
I'd like to pass it along to Susan Rowling, who's online.
So Susan, you're up now. Ms.
Thank
Rowling?
you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me fine?
You're very faint, but...
1 second. Yeah, turn up my volume. Hopefully that helps.
That helps.
Okay, great. Good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Susan Rowling, and I'm the chair of Stay Holdings. It has been a long road getting here to this stage today. Over those years, many hurdles were overcome, and there are still hurdles to overcome before we celebrate grand openings. It is only by having a strong and clear vision and persistence that continues to bring the reality of 286 to fruition. Our Nickel Valley chiefs have kept strong to this vision, knowing and understanding what benefits come from economic development such as this for their people, the people of Merritt, and the entire region. The province of BC valued this vision and kept to their commitment and support by transferring this first parcel of land to Stone Holdings this past March of 2021. The intent was to see economic development at this site. So far we've progressed, and we hope we can continue to progress, and we thank the City of Merritt for helping us along with this, and also Troika, who's been very committed to staying with this project. Thank you. If you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Rowley? No questions for you, Ms. Rowley?
Okay, I'll just check, we have Renee Merrifield, the owner of Troika, online, if she has anything.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm just here to support what has already been said and here for any questions that might need to be answered. I would just love to echo what you've already heard from both Sue, Rich, as well as Gary. This is an amazing story. It's an amazing story of partners, of partnership, of coming together, and really of the future of Merritt, which is pretty exciting, as well as the future of the 5 nickel events, which again is part of the reconciliation that all of us enjoy participation within. So here tonight just to support and to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Merrifield? It doesn't look like there's any questions. Thank you very much. If anyone in the public gallery wishes to make a submission, please come forward now. There are no restrictions on speaking, but if you wish to reiterate a point someone else has already made, please note that simply repeating that does not increase the weight to it. We particularly welcome new points of view that have not yet been expressed, whether that's for or against a proposal. The floor is open for anyone to come and speak to this proposal. Mr. Lois, is there anyone online who's...
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. So I'd like to call a second time. For anyone who wishes to make a submission, please come forward. And for a third and final time, for anyone wishing to make a submission, please come forward. Okay. What I would like to ask for is a mover that bylaw 2327 and 2328 be returned to council for further consideration. We have Christofferson and Etchard. And I'm going to ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? None. So that's carried. On to third reading, which is on tonight's agenda. Okay. Now we're going to delegations and recognitions, and Mr. Sward, this is your time to present.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council. I appreciate you giving me some of your time tonight. My name is Ken Sward, SWARD, and I live on Burgess Crescent in Merritt here. And I want to address a serious concern that I and several of the residents that live on Burgess Avenue have, and that is in regard to the water flow and the spring runoff on Nicola River. I've written letters to all 3 levels of government in the last few weeks, and after discussion with Member of Parliament Mr. Alves and Mayor Brown, it has been suggested that I bring my concerns to you folks this evening. So if we get slide 1, please.
Mr. Lewis, you've become our digital guru tonight.
Yes, I'm not actually sure. Sorry, I know you said you were going to bring a couple to City Hall. When did they arrive? Oh.
I brought them last Friday.
Ah. Well then. Let me just go check the lobby upstairs. I do apologize.
Okay. We will pause for a few moments.
I apologize. We do have them, and I hope they're in the right order.
They should be good.
Don't think they're numbered. Of course, now we're waiting for our antivirus scanner.
No panic, Mr. Lewis. We'll wait.
There we go.
Okay, this is slide 1. My concern is this is Burgess Avenue running west to east, and the Nicola River. It's very hard to see here. Is this what's that?
A little better.
That's a little bit. Yeah. The Nicola River runs. It comes from about over here, runs around, and carries on through and around, and does 40 miles. Our concern on the street is where it comes down here, and it butts into the land here and makes a sharp left turn. And what we're concerned about is that during the spring freshet, that water could go straight through here and down the street. So if we could go to slide 2.
There.
The river is over here to our right, and what we're worried about is that if it does overflow, it would go right down the street, flood these houses, and these are houses of considerable value. We pay a lot of taxes on this street, and there's the church here that's now a school, and the RCMP station just on the other side of Boat Street. And if there was a water flow, it would flow right down the street with the inherent damages that it would do. So that is a major concern that I'd like to bring up. Slide 4, have you got? Yeah, upside down.
Yeah.
Each spring, well, I shouldn't say every spring, but often, there should be another one. Yeah. Most springs, what happens when the water gets high is the city brings in lock blocks, concrete lock blocks, puts them at the end of the street, and this is our dike. And it consists of, 2 rows of sandbags, going to the hill, and those have been in place for several years. Not much of a dike in most people's opinion. We don't want to see a recurrence of what's happened, unfortunately, here this past fall to happen again. So we don't want this to be a common occurrence every year, and a solution that we felt would be is a metered berm, about a 1 to 2 meter berm installed at the east end of Burgess. If we could go back to slide 1, please. And that berm would go from roughly here around to here. It's about 90 meters. It's not that long to put a 3 or 4 foot berm, maybe with some riprap and some fill. Obviously, I'm not a hydrologist, so I'm not the expert there, but that would deflect the water in a permanent situation. There would be no impact to the riparian areas, as I think that this is city land, and the riparian area is tucked right in close to the river. This is grassland here next to a private lot here. So this is the area we're talking about. We feel it's a relatively simple and inexpensive fix compared to the potential damage that could incur should our current dike, consisting of a couple of sandbags high, prove to be inadequate. And there's been ongoing discussions for years, yet nothing concrete has been done to alleviate the problem. It seems like each government level points a finger at the other government level. I understand too that due to the current situation that Merritt's experiencing, the 40-40-20 split in finances has been waived. So due to the disaster. So that's why we felt this would be an appropriate time to bring it to council's attention and have it for you for your consideration to be included in the newly formed flood committee's agenda and have that situation resolved on the end of that street. So does that, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and address them.
Charlie, can I have you turn the lights back on, please? Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Sward?
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. And I look forward to having it on the agenda for the committee's attention.
Before you go, Councillor Fair, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it just occurred to me to ask what happened there during the floods of the Nicola 2017 and 18, I believe it was. Just wondering if you can relate what the experience was like with those existing dikes and how that panned out.
There was lock blocks put in with plastic, and that's, I believe that's, we had just moved in on this in 2017, and that's, I believe, when the sandbags were put there, and that's been left there since then. Yeah, there was water encroachment for sure at that point in time. The water was very high. It's not, I used to live next to the Fraser River, so I get high water stuff a bit, and I grew up there. And it's not a fast-flowing river like the Coldwater. It's a totally different dynamics. So it doesn't take much to hold that water back. It just needs to be held back. It's almost like a back eddy. But where it comes straight through, that's where the problem would incur. And I see it as a simple fix, and so do a lot of people on the street. I don't think it would incur any damage in any other people's property. I just think that the river needs to be, or the land needs to be strengthened to divert the river.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Councillor Luck?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No questions, but just a comment, Mr. Sward, that don't take our silence to mean we're not listening to. We are listening to. There's a number of key areas in our municipality that have the same issue, and we're seeing it as an opportunity this time with what happened here to build back there much better than it has been before. So this will certainly be on the agenda as a number of other key areas in the community, and we are working on these issues right now. Mr. Smith is on the phone constantly during the day, working with the senior levels of government, working to pull things together on it. So we are listening. It's a lot of work to do. There's many fingers in the pie on something like this. Department of Fisheries, the Ministry of Environment, and all those kind of things, senior level. So we are listening, Mr. Sward. So please be patient with us. We are working on this very, very hard. We recognize a lot of things that have happened in our community, so this will certainly be on our list of things that we need to look at. So, but thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate you coming forward and talking for the citizens of Burgess and that on this. So thank you.
Thank you. And I believe that Mr. Albert, the MP, has he didn't directly say so, but I feel that we have his support in this endeavor as well. So. But I understand the bureaucracy with DFO and so on. But it has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, it has. Thank you very much.
Mr. Elvis was given a tour of the area, so he did see it firsthand. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to provide a little bit of information as well. One slight misconception is that the 20% component for municipalities hasn't been waived at this point. We're advocating for support on that front very, very strongly, but there hasn't been any formal waiver where we kind of get a blanket thumbs up to run projects on the provinces and federal dime. What I can say is we are absolutely looking to plan, as we're doing cold water river planning as we speak, to extend that to the Nicola River, because we see this as both watersheds being critically important from a planning perspective. I have been given the preliminary indication that kind of funding priority is probably going to be looking at cold water river first, given there's damage and potential to remediate some situations there using more DFA dollars. But that the folks that I'm talking with do agree that it's a great idea to be doing the planning work for the Nicola water as a whole. And so what I would like, or Nicola River as a whole, so what I would likely say is part of this is we're probably going to see a full system design, and it's that engineering report is going to identify the most critical areas of need, and we'll probably be taking kind of their advice and guidance as to what those most critical areas to be shored up are. But I can guarantee you that when you're running that full stretch, there's some areas on the Nicola River, and I think Burgess is obviously one of the ones that is directly abutting residential properties. It's close to those lines. Lots of those properties, even if they're not getting super wet inside the homes, they're running the pumps hard. They are wet in the grass. I was in there taking measurements in 2018, and so I know it was running over the road, not super hard or aggressive, but
right in here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It would saturate this corner property and run across there a bit. So you're not wrong that this is something that is going to need to be looked at and considered. I think that it'll likely be part of a broader aggregate package is all I wanted to say, and then to clear up that slight item that we haven't been given a thumbs up that we're covered on the municipal portion of DFA expenses yet, though I'm hopeful we'll get there.
Yeah, I just, we've heard that for several years since we've moved in, that it's being looked at, so hopefully it gets done. Okay.
It still will continue to be looked at until we get it done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can definitely say this being looked at is fundamentally different than whatever the previous being looked at.
Much better opportunity.
It's actually being looked at.
Thank you.
Councillor Richard, question?
Well, just adding to a lot of the different comments, I know that a lot of us are concerned and hear your words and are very concerned with flooding, as everyone. Flooding is the new F word anyway. It's been something that's we've all been watching, and we're all watching to see what happens with the river levels earlier in the year, where freshet's been a concern for Nicola. I think what's happened in the last 3 months will have us all on high alert, watching what's going to happen and how things are being affected. So I think that we hear what you're discussing, and I think that as we look at future planning, strategic plan, it will be top of mind, because we've seen what can happen when things aren't adequate. So thanks for the input.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sward.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
And may I remind council that these are not times for big long comments. They're questions for the public only. Thank you. Mr. Sonnberger?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sonnberger. I bought about a year and a bit ago, I bought a facility down on the north end of Douglas Street. I think Mrs. Brown knows this very well. It was her father's facility. We bought the facility to store excavator parts, heavy equipment parts. During the whole evacuation, we were not allowed access to the facility to provide spare parts for people who were working off on the Coca-Cola as well as on the Abbotsford and Hope side. And I was a little bit shocked the other day when I received my business license, that it was a full price on the business license, and I was basically for 1 month we couldn't sell or we couldn't move any parts, and yet we had to basically pay the business license for the full price. So I came down here to the City Hall, and Mr. Lewis basically invited me here for this evening to kind of bring that to an attention that I was just a bit like, wow, you know. Because if I go and rent a car somewhere and the car doesn't run, I usually don't expect to pay for the car. So I pay for a business license to do business, no problem. But if I'm basically not allowed to go to the facility and get parts, then I'm a little bit like, wow, it would be nice to have a deduction or something like that. So that's all I would like to bring up to the council.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sonnberger? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, there is no unfinished business. We do have a third reading on a bylaw, official community plan amendment bylaw number 2327, zoning amendment bylaw number 2328 that we've just had the public hearing about. And Ms. Bradshaw, can you add anything to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. As I provided an overview at the start of the public hearing, that still stands. I have no additional information to add, but I am here for questions.
Thank you. I think we've already used most of our questions on the public hearing side as Mr. Lois looks over. But if there are other questions, this is the time that we ask them. Okay. See none. Do we have any comments, debate? Anybody have anything to say before I ask the question? Okay, I may ask for a motion. The council give third reading to official community plan amendment bylaw. Mover?
Second.
That was number 2327, 2021, by the way. So Christopherson and Luck. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Now I need a mover seconder. The council give third reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 2328, 2021. Fair and Luck. And any questions on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? None? That too is carried. Thank you. We move on to new business. And feel free to leave. You don't have to stay till the very end. We won't be, we won't feel bad if you do leave at this point. But you're welcome to stay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is the 9.1 utility billing credit for flood impacted residents. And Mr. Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, what I'm bringing forward to you here is a recommendation to provide a credit to those citizens that have been impacted. So a little bit of a background. I think we all know the date the flood happened was November 14th, 15th, and individuals were out of their homes for a number of days as we evacuated the city. It varied between different zones. On the first page there, you can see that the bench was out for 9 days. The area north of Nicola, 13 days. South of Nicola, I call it, but there may be other names for it, but it's the zone 3 was 21 days. And the flood impacted residents up to December 31st. That was a 45-day period. And we know that quite a few of them are still out of their homes today. So we've had requests.
And you're talking Nicola Avenue, not...
not Nicola River. Yes, pardon me, Nicola Avenue. There have been requests made to city employees, and I'm sure council has heard some requests as well. Is there an opportunity for the city to credit back water, sewer, and garbage services that were not incurred over those timeframes for the varying areas of the city? There were other funding sources available to residents. I think everyone's pretty aware the Red Cross came forward with a $2,000 amount per household for those evacuees that were impacted due to extra costs and so forth as a result of flooding. So it's not, this is not the only source of funding for those residents. There have been other organizations that have stepped forward. Now, the impact of providing potential credits, so an analysis was done to determine if we do credits for all of those that were impacted for the number of days, or if we reduce it down to individual zones. So zones 1, 2, and 3, a credit factor on page 2 there has been created of 4.45, 6.43, 10.38%. That's based on a semi-annual invoice from July 1st through December 31st, which is normally $406.49, discounted down to $365.84, just due to the fact that there was an extension to the deadline on payment to December 31st, so those residents should have been able to pay and receive that 10% discount. So that's the basis for the factor on those zones. Zone 4, the credit factor is based on the full $406.49. As we know, lots of those residents were out of town and not able to return for December 31st to pay those bills, and may have not a home to pay those bills for. So that is a 24.73 factor. On page 3 at the top is a summary of the billing for that period, so just over $1 million. And breaking it down by zone and by the factors on page 2. The total, if we were to apply to all zones, would be $115,000, $9,000 for one, and $40,000 for zone 4, and so forth. The credit per utility account, based on a standard residential invoices, and they're not all standard. Some people have suites, and some people have extra garbage cans and those sort of things. But on a standard bill for Zone 4, it works out to about $100, which is roughly a quarter of that semi-annual billing. And Zone 1 would be 18, and 2, 26, and Zone 3, 42. So the process that we would go through to apply credits, depending on what you select, or you may not select any, is that we would apply them directly to the utility account using a import of a file into the system, so it's not a big manual process for us to get these credits in. That would sit on the utility account until the April 2022 invoice is generated, and then would reduce that amount for them on the first billing in 2022. If the property is in Zone 4, we're suggesting that a refund check could be issued for that $100 if there is nothing to apply it against, or they just need the funds. We would offer up a refund check instead of having it sit for 4 months. As we prepare that April invoice, we're going to work with Development Services to determine when people have re-entered their homes, if their homes are inhabitable, and based on the occupancy, we would provide a credit on that first billing as well from January 1st to the point that they were able to get back in their house. It's going to be a bit of a process. There's about 400 properties there, so we need to go through that on a one-by-one basis based on occupancy. So the options that are put forward today are that council direct staff to apply a utility billing credit for the residents in Zone 4 impacted by flood evacuation order with an estimated total cost of $40,242.22. Second option is that council direct staff to apply a utility billing credit to all residents impacted by flood evacuation orders with an estimated total credit of $115,661. That council approve a utility billing credit for one or more of the zones impacted by the flood evacuation orders using the rates in this report or an alternative calculation method, or you receive this report for information only. The impact of this credit, the $40,000 for Zone 4, represents roughly 0.41% of the 2021 municipal property tax budget of $9.7 million. The full $115,000 is about a 1.19% impact on the property tax budget there. So the credit would be applied in 2022, but it would be reflected in our 2021 operating results as it is a service that was provided in 2021. So others consulted development staff and just going through the whole list of all of the properties in the evacuation orders and stuff. So that was a bit of a process. So thank you, Don and Jana. And that's the report.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for a mover. Do you have a? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you were going to move it. Can you? Oh, I'm the one that has to do it. I'm sorry.
I'd like to move that we go with option 2, that council direct staff to apply for utility billing credit for all residents impacted by the flood evacuation orders with an estimated total credit of $115,661.28.
Second. We have a second. Okay, we do have a seconder. Anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Richard.
I feel that the option 2 gives a fair rebate to everyone, and because the flood affected everybody in town, but of course Zone 4 far worse than Zone 1. But this way, it gives a credit towards everyone, and of course the impacted properties could get the refund checks if their property is uninhabitable, and we don't necessarily know right now all the condition of all the homes. We find out daily with updates, so that's why I would support option 2. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Smith?
Worship, we just wanted to provide one piece of information that may affect how you view this decision. In the Treasury Board submission that we've recently made to the provincial government, we did include $115,000 that we were asking for utility offset, and so if we were to get that, council may have the opportunity to go back and retroactively apply the larger credit amount should you choose to go that direction. Because as it stands right now, we would be making this payment out of municipal coffers without any guarantee that we would be getting funding supports to backstop that. But if we did, it could be something that is potentially revisitable to provide it to the rest as a sort of a backstop amount. But I think that we have to also acknowledge that this quarter there's multiple properties that are going to be affected, and so when we're asking for 115, this could stretch into multiple utility billing periods, and so just wanted to be mindful that this 115 might end up being more than that over time. So information to do with as you will, and if you have any questions, we're happy to speak to that.
Thank you. I don't really want to go to everybody at this point. I know that there was a number of, everyone could apply for the $2,000 from Red Cross, and some people came back to homes that were unaffected, and yes, they were out for a while, but they have this money that they can put towards it, in my opinion. I think the ones who are not in their homes, the ones who cannot inhabit their homes, those are the ones I'd like to see the credit given to, because they still have ongoing expenses. That's my own personal opinion. That's against the motion that is currently on the floor. Do I see anyone else speaking to this? Councillor Christopherson.
I'm torn because I like to be fair to everybody, but when we look at it for Zone 4, it's already substantial, but that figure is quite likely to keep climbing. Some of those homes, we won't know the answer to that one for quite a while yet. And Zone 1 and 2, the amounts there are negligible. Zone 3, more so, but I think Zone 4 has the potential to be way more significant now. So, against my nicer nature, I can't support the motion
2. Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Richard?
Well, just to add to my earlier comment, even if going forward Zone 4 is affected, and we know that, this amount wouldn't necessarily be the same. This one option is from November 15th to December the 31st, and then in future billing cycles we can look at just Zone 4. This doesn't necessarily have to be each billing cycle, because there's twice a year, because it would affect the next billing cycle. Some of these homes may be rebuilt, maybe there'll be a development permit so they can rebuild and be back in their homes, but it would really depend. Varying degrees of damage on the properties out there, so that's the only reason why I thought 2 would work, but anyway, thanks.
Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I was in Zone 4. I didn't have my utilities, but I would. Mr. Andrew, is there a way for people like myself to opt out of any kind of refund? I would be fine with that, so that money's available to go to people that really need it. Those people that are not back in their home yet, and we have no idea when some of these people get back in their home. It's not like it's a real burden on our family, but yeah, there was a way of opting out. Is that I get? Where's the computer program for that, right? So I don't know. That's why I'm a little hesitant. I can see the fairness in number 2, but I can see that we're going to be in for this for a little bit here. And if the government does pay, if the senior level government gives us the money, that's great. But if it doesn't, wow, it's a 1% hit on our taxes too, right? But maybe there's some people that just say, look, I'll just opt out. I received my $2,000 from the Red Cross. That's what was supposed to be paying for some of those incidental costs. So I don't know. I've thrown a wrench at you there, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Luck there. So there's a way. I mean, we can wait a week or two to process the credit, and we could put a request out there that if you have a property in Zone 4 where you weren't impacted and you want to give back the credit or such, then that could be done before we transfer the file. So we could remove that one from the list of credits. So there is an opportunity to do that. Are you sure you're in Zone 4? It's Zone 3 and 4. Zone 4?
So I was in Zone 4 up in Collabelle on the high side by Collabelle School. That was Zone 4, was it not? Or have we rejigged the zones? Because I was in Zone 4.
Don will confirm that.
Mr. McCarthy.
I was in Zone 4.
That's exactly right, Mr. Smith. There was too many iterations. I believe a lot of Collettville was in Zone 4, but I don't know if your area of Collettville was included. Off the top of my head, I think it was excluded. Off the top of my head. But I don't want to 100% say that because Mr. Lowe's is looking for the official map right now.
We've had too many of them.
But as Mr. Anderson mentioned, there is a way to do it. If a property owner did want to be excluded from the rebate, there is a way we could do that. Yeah.
And the potential for having others opt in if they also are in another zone and impacted to the same degree. I don't know that.
I'm getting a little bit nervous about the unwieldiness of.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said anything, but
Yeah, and we also seem to be speaking against the motion. Is there something?
Well, I'm kind of
I'm
speaking
not
to
sure
them.
who's on and who's off, and I know that Councillor Fair wants to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that although I seconded the motion, I'm having second thoughts, and I think in the interest of fiscal responsibility, it might be better to just go with Zone 4 this time. So that's just my opinion.
And that would mean that we would need to amend the current motion. Is that what you're wanting to do?
Pull it off the table and put motion 1 back on the floor.
No.
Rather than amend it.
Mr. Lewis?
Your Worship, by far the easiest way to do this, if that's what you'd like to do, is to, not sure where that feedback's coming from, sorry, would be to simply vote against the motion as it stands, and then you'd still need to decide to do something, so you could move anything else except that.
Okay, thank you. Whoa, do we have just too many on?
Possibly.
Okay. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Christopherson? I'm going to go with you
No,
first.
go ahead, yeah, because he hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, table it.
Oh, he did.
Anyways, Mr. Smith mentioned that we can revisit this at another time, and I think maybe we'll have a better handle by that time on what the true implications are going to be. I think if it was cut and dry like it is on here, I would probably support the motion. But I think there's too large an unknown there to go with it, and I would rather us withdraw the motion and start over again.
Okay, but we're going to vote on the motion.
Yeah, so I'm speaking against it.
Okay. Councillor Luck.
Yeah, that was basically my thing, Councillor Christopherson, is just clarity on that. We got this uncertainty piece happening right now that we got a request in the provincial. If we get that, then we can look at this again. I really feel much more comfortable with that myself. Sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to call a question that council directs staff to apply a utility billing credit for all residents impacted by the flood evacuation orders with an estimated total credit of $115,661.28. All in favor? Opposed? It's defeated. And is anyone going to make another?
So I'll move that council direct staff to apply a utility billing credit for the residents in Zone 4 impacted by the flood evacuation order with an estimated total cost of $40,242.22.
Need a seconder?
Second.
So that was Luck and Fair. And anyone want to speak to this? We've already pretty well spoken. I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. And we missed a second side to that. And the council directs staff to oversee the application of 2022 credits for residents of Zone 4 based on changes to occupancy status.
So move.
Luck and Christopherson. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Edgard?
Opposed.
Thank you. Okay, and we go now to 9.2, extension of visitor services at the Baillie House. Mr. MacArthur? Oh.
Sorry, Mayor.
Just an extension of that, we've just talked about a water credit and everything. We had a presentation tonight about the credit for business licenses. We can look at that as another agenda item, or are we just going to, I didn't know if this is, we're seeing how we're talking credits. Just so we have that discussion. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, just.
Mr. Anderson?
That wasn't on the agenda tonight, Mr. Luck. I mean, it can be a resolution, I guess, to be on a future agenda. As with the water utility credit here, I mean, it's a service that's provided by the city. Our cost to deliver that service did not really materially change over that 45-day period. We still had public works employees and other employees with the city. There may have been a few savings with regards to garbage trucks not hitting the roads, but we did have those costs, and business licenses would fall under the same sort of scenario there, that we set business license rates based on the cost of delivering those services. and I'm not sure the delivery costs reduced dramatically over that period as well. So for sure, that could be added to a future agenda, and we can bring that forward.
And that's not something we usually do when there's a public input or a presentation.
No, I realize that, but it had been brought up. This, we were talking credits of this, so I thought I'd just bring it up to that. I like your explanation. I'll leave it alone after this.
Mr. MacArthur, did you have a comment?
On the business license side?
I'm not sure you.
No, but I have a report to present after this. So.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
We're back to the Baillie House.
Yes.
Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council may recall that at the November 24th, 2020 Council meeting, Council directed staff to explore options for the Visitor Information Centre. Unfortunately, with the unfilled Economic Development Manager position in the second half of 2021, we didn't have the capacity to explore those options and to bring back a report to Council to further discuss that matter. If it's still Council's desire to explore those options, staff will do so in 2022. We can bring a report to discuss that for future years. In the meantime, however, we do need to provide visitor services, so this is why we have the report tonight. Staff are recommending that Council enter into a one-year extension of the agreement with the Nicola Valley Heritage Society to provide visitor services at the Baillie House. The proposed agreement is for just over $52,000, the same amount that was paid to the Nicola Valley Heritage Society in 2020 and again in 2021. Staff have not included an inflationary increase at all, being mindful of the city budget, especially post-flood, of course. Of note, the city will receive $25,000 from Destination BC. One of the requirements of that grant funding is that the city provide a minimum of 660 hours of in-person visitor information services during the course of this year. So partnering with the Nicola Valley Heritage Society to operate the Baillie House would help the city meet that commitment. So if Council has any questions for staff, we would be happy to address those at this time.
Are there any questions for staff? Councillor Etcher.
So is it accurate then to say if it's the same, they can operate within the same budget as what they have, the manager and volunteer, and be open 6 days a week essentially, or is it 7?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Etcher, through your worship. That's correct. I mean, we did ask the Nicola Valley Heritage Society for a proposal on that, but you know, I think we're all really mindful of the budget right now, especially given obviously the events of the recent past. So, you know, would it potentially be fair to add an inflationary increase for them? Possibly, but we're hoping that they would be able to operate under the same budget, and they've agreed to these terms. So tentatively here, based obviously depending on what council decides, we would then move forward into those agreement discussions. So.
Mr. MacArthur, I think on their proposal,
yeah,
that they looked at an increase for 2021, and there is no increase in for 2022 at this point in time.
That's right. Originally, for that 2021, they had wanted an increase, but it was not provided to them at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. Thank you for clarifying that.
So essentially, operating at the same level.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable.
And Mr. Luck, Councillor Luck?
Oh, I just want to clarify that as far as I'm concerned, that request is still in for us to look at different ways of providing that service. I think that's what the discussion was last year as well. Is that right? So that's still in place?
That's something that council to decide at the strategic planning session. That
yeah.
It is still in place.
It's still in place. Good.
Don't retract it. It's on.
Yes.
Good. Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
No other questions? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder. The council directs the mayor and director of corporate services to execute a one-year tourism and visitor information services agreement with the Nicola Valley Heritage Society for $52,133 $2,000.20 for 2022. Councillor Edgard Christopherson. And any other comments? See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to say that I do recall the discussion about this in the prior, when the prior discussion occurred. And the discussion at that time was basically trying to determine if we should have a multi-year agreement or just a single year. And I think, so it still makes sense to have the single year, and especially to just not put the additional pressure on staff in the short term.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'll call that question again. All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. I think your shirt was brighter than your button. And that brings us to notices of motion. Does council have any notices of motion to bring forward? I do not see any. We'll move on to reports from council. Are there any reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to information items and the annual water consumption. Mr. Henderson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the top graph, you'll see the annual average for 2021 coming in at 761 liters per person, which is definitely down from a high of 2018. In the past 5 years, that high was 1,066 liters. So we are down from 2020 as well, and slightly up from 2019. Scrolling down to the monthly breakdown, you'll see August, the water restrictions had definitely made quite a large impact compared to 2020. Mr. Smith brought up a good point on November. We did expect November to be slightly lower due to the flooding. However, with draining all of the reservoirs, filling all the reservoirs, and flushing the entire city, our consumption was down from the previous year, but higher than what we kind of expected. Overall, it paints a great picture of water restrictions, especially with the two very, very high heat waves that we encountered in June and July. We almost came out peacefully in July. They're obviously a bit higher in June.
Any questions for Mr. Henderson? Councillor Love.
Thank you, Charlie. This is excellent. I was wondering, it's always good to see what our usage is, but the real proof in the pudding is comparisons, right? You compare it to something. Is there any way we could have added to that chart a BC day average, per capita average? Is there some way that we can see how we measure up against the rest of the province? Is that possible to have that added on there?
Sure, I could maybe look to a municipality of the same size.
Next time. Sorry?
Like a municipality of the same size?
No, just the BC average.
BC average?
Yeah, I think that would be good unless somebody wants to have a certain community average, but a BC average would be really nice. I know it's hard to compare against, but it just kind of gives you a bit of an idea, right? So it's something like that.
Councillor Christopherson.
Actually, I would just like to kind of qualify that BC average, because a lot of BC is a lot wetter than we are. How about, I would prefer other desert areas to see how we work. But that's just a comment. I think it would be more useful than a BC average.
Okay.
I've missed Councillor Fair.
So just a question regarding what the reduced consumption numbers tell us. Can we clearly point to restrictions as causing that? And how long have we, I don't know how long we've had restrictions, but my understanding was that it has been for quite a long time. So have they changed in how we implement them, or is this just a product of people just choosing to use less water? I'm just trying to get my head around exactly what, because these are impressive reductions, so.
Probably the communication of our restrictions, and we did have the change through their policy I believe, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Charlie's correct. So we have had a policy in place for some time, though what I will say is it's actually about the turn, and being in 2018, I remember having conversations with Charlie where we were no uncertain terms being drilled on the city's kind of drought response initiatives, and that we have this in place, but why is it that we're not advancing the stages of watering restrictions in lockstep with the drought levels that the province is putting out? And so, though we've had the same policy really for quite some time, we often never advanced below the 3 days of watering per week, just kind of left it no matter what the drought level got to. And is 2017 on there? If you can scroll up to that. So 2017 was actually a particularly bad drought year, which is where I think a lot of the provincial policy started kind of becoming live to this. Then they started pushing it in 2018, and our numbers went great. And you can see that we really kind of went hard at that in 2019. And I do think it is the single greatest explainer. That isn't to say that there's other factors as well, but 2019 was the first year where we were in stage 4 for any extended period of time. And those summer months, as you can tell from the below chart, they're the highest water consumption marks by a significant measure. You look at a month of November, you could cram 3 Novembers into what you do in August. So, this really is outdoor watering primarily that's driving these figures. And when you can take giant chunks out of August, you do make a difference in supporting the health of the Coldwater River. What I think we are getting to is that, in our view, telling people very prescriptively what you can and can't do is probably not the long-term best solution. We would love to implement things like water metering and other solutions so that people can somewhat make their own decisions. This isn't to say that water restrictions are ever going to go away entirely, but when it hurts to use water because you don't want to pay extra, people make really conscious water decisions. And so as a team, we kind of think that this high 700s threshold is probably about as low as our water consumption is going to get in our municipality with the current infrastructure without water metering. So this is probably what we're looking at. And again, BC average right now, for context, is just under 500 liters per person per day. But we do need to acknowledge that that's primarily driven by much more dense areas that don't have lawns. So when we're looking at comparable communities, and we've talked about it in previous meetings, we're not far off with the new 700 figures. We were way far off when we were in the 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,300 numbers that we used to have. But it's much closer now.
And just after that, I think community involvement and getting the message out that we need as a community to get behind this. And I think that has really driven our numbers down with our education and putting it out on websites and medias. And we probably didn't see that back in the 2016, 2017. So I think this is really a reflection of the community starting to understand that we need to reduce our water.
Yeah, I think that's a really great success story. Merritt had a reputation for being a high water user for a long time, I think, and so this, it's great to see this. Thank you.
And I do believe that most or all of those ones did come back. Councillor Christopherson. Oh, sorry.
Just seeing the graph there, seeing that we've come down, I don't think it's really necessary to waste anyone's time with another comparison of how we are. We're going to be higher than Vancouver and other cities because, of course, they have the high rises that we don't have. And when you compare us to towns like Princeton or Summerland, which have the lawns like we do, of course, we're going to be right in the range. So I think it'd just be a complete waste of Charlie's time to have him bring us another graph just to show that we use more than Vancouver. I mean, who cares? We know that we're using less. And I mean, we care.
It'll take me 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I just think it's a waste of his time. I mean, we know that we're using less because we're having education out there, but I just think it'd be a waste of his time to present us another one when we've discussed it before. Thanks.
Councillor Christopherson.
And maybe for the final word, Meredith's finally starting to get the idea that a brown lawn is actually a badge of honor.
It is.
And we now look down on people with green lawns. I hear.
Are we done with this discussion? Charlie, that wasn't a motion from council, so feel free to do whatever you choose on that number for the next time you present to us. Thank you. And so that, where are we on the agenda? That brings us to, oh, that was information items. So we are now moving into a closed session. And so we will pause
Your
for...
Worship, the motion to do so.
We need a motion to, that the meeting be closed to the press and public under section 91D of the community charter, the security of the property of the municipality. That was Fair and Christopherson, I think. And all in favor? Opposed, none. That is carried. And so now we take